I had been looking forward to this ski trip for 2 months. Work had been chaotic. 10 hours a day, 6 days a week for 2 months. I truly felt I had earned it. When we finally reached the resort, it was like I had this giant weight lifted off my shoulders. The fresh air, the way the fallen snow made everything look fresh and new. It was truly beautiful. We settled into our room about 10 a.m. I had a bit of jet lag, but after a 2-hour nap, I felt recharged. Friends that had stayed here before us all said we had to do the moonlight ski. Apparently, at this time of the year, the sky creates a northern lights effect with the reflections off the fresh snow and the full moon. I was told it would be an experience we would never forget. After a nice lunch, my wife and I headed for the slopes. I had been skiing since I was 10. My wife, on the other hand, was a moderate skier, but was not as seasoned as me. I had heard about a slope called Devil's Drop. I knew it was too much for her, but if the opportunity presented itself, it would definitely get checked off my bucket list. We spent the afternoon enjoying ourselves. After about 6 trips down the slopes, we took a break for dinner. Over dinner, we both gushed about how amazing this place was. I tried to fight the urge to bring up Devil's Drop, then, to my surprise, she said she knew I wanted to do it. I cautiously agreed. She laughed and said if it was something I wanted to do, then I should do it. Excitement flooded over me. I couldn't believe she was on board. She said there was just one condition. She didn't want to be there. I was really confused. Do what you gotta do, she said, but she would be back at the resort relaxing in our hot tub with her favorite drink. I laughed and said I will call you when I get to the bottom. We kissed and parted ways. It took about an hour to get to the summit. 2 chairlifts were used because of the extreme altitude. On the ride up, the guy next to me said you only have to take 1 chairlift once you've conquered the Devil's Drop. He had done it once and said he thanked God for the lower lift because he was physically exhausted and it gave him time to process what he just accomplished. I smiled and said this was my first time and the anticipation was killing me. We high-fived and hopped off the chair. At the same time, we both said, "See you at the bottom." He took off like a rocket. As he reached the peak, he instantly went airborne. His silhouette dropped quickly from my view. In a fading voice, I heard him yell, "No guts, no glory." Feeling unsure, I slowly moved to the peak. The moonlight made the most beautiful glistening effect on the snow. It was like a perfectly still lake after a storm. 3 deep breaths, and I was descending the hill at an incredible rate. My fear was quickly overpowered by my skill. Before I knew it, I was having the time of my life. I blasted over the snow with no regard for whatever lay ahead. I could go on and on about the excitement of that run, but that's just the start of the story. I reached the bottom. My adrenaline was in overdrive. I sat on an old log so I could take in what I just did. I enjoyed watching other skiers reach the bottom with the same enthusiasm as me. I called my wife like I promised. I wanted to tell her how amazing it was in person, but my excitement just took over. Pretty soon we had been on the phone for a while. I noticed I had not seen another skier. I knew it was late, so I jumped on the ski lift and continued the rest of the way down the mountain. About 5 or 6 minutes into the ride, the chairlift just stopped. There I was, 40 feet off the ground, by myself, on the side of a mountain. I thought maybe it just paused. When the chair lights went out, I knew I had a problem. Frantically, I scrambled to get my phone out of my inside pocket. In my panic, I did not remove my gloves. The phone slipped from my hand and slid to the other end of the chair. Suddenly, I felt like everything was in slow motion. I watched the phone in horror slide to a stop. About a third of it hung off the edge of the chair. I froze in terror, trying not to move a muscle. Slowly, I tried to slide to the other end of the chair. With every inch I tried to move, the chair began to sway side to side. I froze and tried to figure a way to secure it. I stared at it, then I thought to use my ski pole. Just as I completed that thought, gravity took over. In slow motion, I watched my phone slide off the edge of the chair. The second it was free from the chair, it was like a little rocket engine was pushing it to the ground. It was quickly consumed by the fluffy white snow below. I could see the illuminated screen glowing through, but I knew a jump from this height could turn this from bad to worse. I knew I needed an escape plan. If I spent the night out here, I would probably freeze to death. To my left was a mature tree line, and even though it looked close, I knew I could not reach it. Below was an easy 40-foot drop, not to mention that white fluffy snow could be hiding a path of rocks placed below for drainage when they built the lift. The kind of thing you notice in the summer when you're out hiking. Suddenly, out of the corner of my eye, I see the dim light from my phone instantly get bright. When I looked down, I saw a large animal pawing at my phone. When I say large, I mean it picked up my iPhone in its mouth and I could not see the light anymore. It walked a few feet, then it spit it out. The light from the phone showed it to be some kind of a really large cat. Mountain lion, cougar, panther, I have no clue what it was, but it was definitely part of that family. It pawed at my phone for a bit, then it stopped and began to smell the air, as if it had picked up a scent. It walked in circles, sniffing the air. All of a sudden, it stopped and looked right at me. Up until now, the distance between me and the ground was tormenting. If I jumped, would I land with no injuries? Minimal injuries, or would I lay there paralyzed as I froze to the ground, hopefully discovered in the spring thaw? With my new friend pacing beneath me, the height seemed comforting. However, I kind of felt like a piece of meat on a rope being dangled over a lion's cage at the zoo. He stopped pacing and just stared at me. Occasionally, he would turn his glare to the tree line to my left. It's like he was trying to decide if he could make the leap from the tree to the chairlift. It was fairly dark, so it was hard to be sure, but I don't think either of us thought he could make it. I could feel my extremities starting to lose feeling. I laid down on the chair and wedged my ski poles into the armrests so I would not fall. I curled up as tight as I could to try and utilize my body heat. As I laid there, I could feel his piercing stare. I thought if I ignored him, maybe he would lose interest. I closed my eyes. I awoke to a burst of adrenaline, the way you do when you start to fall asleep in math class at school, then you catch yourself. I could not have been out for more than a few minutes, but when I looked down, he was gone. My body went limp with relief. I tried to see where his tracks went, but they were quickly lost to the darkness. Even though he was gone, I still could not consider jumping. The drop was risky, and I didn't know where the cat had gone. Without the adrenaline, I realized I was getting tired. I watched and waited for his return. After about an hour, I saw no signs of him. I couldn't fight the exhaustion any longer. I closed my eyes and hoped I wouldn't freeze while I slept. I quickly slipped into a dream where I was swimming in the middle of a large lake. I saw a wake across the water moving toward me. A pair of eyes surfaced above the water. It was a large crocodile. I swam from the distant shoreline. I looked over my shoulder and it was 3 feet behind me. I started to scream and that's when it grabbed me. A loud bang woke me from that horrible dream. I tried to get my bearings as the chairlift swung side to side like a pendulum. I could hear the sound of claws frantically scratching the aluminum chair near my feet. Unable to pull himself up, he just hung on to the side of the chair. I grabbed a hold of the seat back. I quickly pulled myself upright while compacting myself to the other end of the chair. The cat was determined to pull itself to the safety of the chair. I grabbed my ski pole and jammed the bottom point into the cat's face. It let out a horrific scream and began to fall to the ground, much like domestic cats I've seen. It landed on all fours, like it jumped off of a couch. I watched him stare at me while he paced in circles, then he headed for the tree line. In a matter of seconds, he scaled the large tree to a limb that put him level with the chairlift. I could see the determination in his face. He was about to try the leap again. I think the cold was beginning to wear on me because, like my dream, I started to think this was the inevitable outcome, nature's way of balancing itself. We sat perfectly still, just staring eye to eye. In a strange way, I felt a connection with this magnificent animal. I was actually coming at peace with what was about to happen. I completely relaxed and told him I understand. I watched him maneuver the limb to its thinnest point, never once breaking his stare. He softly licked his lips as he began to crouch. Just when I thought he was going to leap, a loud metallic bang raced through the giant ski lift. My lift chair began to sway forward and back. Instantly, the entire area was illuminated by the ski lift lights. I began to slowly move forward as the lift engaged. We never broke our stare. We both watched each other as more and more distance came between us. In just a few moments, all I could see was the cluster of limbs obstructing my view of him. It was over. I pulled myself in tight like a child after a bad dream. I just stared straight ahead for the rest of the ride down. When I reached the bottom, there were first responders everywhere. I was quickly taken to the warmth of an EMS van. I was bombarded with questions of how I survived the cold. I was reluctant to answer or even speak. I went up that mountain with hopes of coming down a stronger, more confident man. Nature showed me my place in this world and that life is a gift that should never be taken.